Welcome to today's webinar, Managing Unexpected or Unplanned Events, sponsored by ETQ. I'm Dirk Ducharme, Editor-in-Chief for Quality Digest and your host for today's webinar. Many organizations struggle with tracking, trending, and investigating unplanned events that impact the quality, performance, safety, or reliability of their products. And often there is little to no visibility into the full impact that a deviation or an event may have on an organization's business. And without that visibility, organizations put their overall quality of the product at risk and stand the chance of impacting their brand reputation. So today we're going to learn how the new quality events application from ETQ provides a standard process for investigating an event to ensure each investigation is performed consistently and in a timely manner, following a defined workflow. We're also going to learn how a total solution can help address the risk of deviations and other events, leverage nonconformance reporting, and identify when corrective actions need to be taken. Before we get started, just a reminder that you can send us questions using the Q&A box. You can find the Q&A button down there at the bottom, down at the bottom of your screen. If you mouse down, you'll see it pop up. Click that button and send your questions to us as you think of them, and we will answer them after the presentation. A recording of this webinar will be available one day, 24 hours after the webinar. You will get an email with that information from Quality Digest. Also, if you need a certificate of attendance, you need to answer one of the polling questions that will come up during the webinar. Okay, let's get started. We have three presenters today. First is David Isaacson, Senior Director of Product Marketing at ETQ. David has more than 25 years experience in software product marketing and product management. He has worked for software companies such as Anaqua, VFA Accruent, and Oracle, where he led the product management team responsible for integrating analytics into the Oracle database. Next, we have Kim Wakeman, Group Product Manager Applications at ETQ. Kim has more than 20 years of experience working in the medical device industry. Her industry experience has provided her with a valuable understanding of business processes and the best methodology to implement them in the ETQ platform. And finally with us today is Eric Dano, Solutions Engineer at ETQ. Eric has been with ETQ for 7 years and is responsible for demonstrating the Reliance product to both potential and current clients. Prior to joining ETQ, he was a sales engineer for an education technology company and was focused on product training for the entire sales team. And Dave, I believe you are starting us off.
That's correct. Thank you, Dirk. And I'd like to add my welcome to everybody who's joined us today on the call. We'll go through a couple of different discussion points today with you and with Kim and Eric. Part of that will be just looking at the whole ETQ unplanned events, which I will take us through, and then Kim will talk about the overview of quality events, and then Eric will get more into a demonstration at the end. We certainly will take questions. Please, as Dirk said, fill in the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen in the Zoom widget, and we will get to those as we go. So let me start by just introducing ETQ. We are a quality management system provider, and we're dedicated to creating competitive advantage through quality. So what does that mean? That means taking a set of market-leading capabilities and allowing you to apply those to some of your most difficult quality management issues and successfully address all of those issues. And today, when we get into quality events, you'll see how we're actually expanding your ability to handle a number of different unplanned deviations, events, instances, incidents, call them what you will. But we want to make sure that you have the right tools to do your job as quality professionals. It is the quality management system, the ETQ product called Reliance, and it is a cloud-native solution that is highly flexible, highly scalable, has over 42 different applications and processes to really address all of the different types of quality activities that you would see in your organization. We're in our 30th year of solving quality problems. We've probably addressed so many different issues, and what we've done is taken all of that knowledge and integrated it into our product. We've learned over the years what really is required for our customers to do their jobs most effectively. And that allows us to provide a really outstanding customer experience. So and speaking of customers, we take a look at the next slide, you'll see that we do address a lot of customers in a lot of different industries. And what's really unique about this capability is that we're able to take the best practices from, discrete manufacturing and medical devices and consumer goods and process and food and beverage and so forth and so on, and bring them all together and share that information. Our customers find that the sharing of information between themselves really helps drive their use of quality management forward. Now, we're going to get into quality events, and it is the culmination of bringing together a lot of different capabilities. I mean, when you look at where a quality event could occur, it can go in lots of different directions. Is that coming from customer feedback or a complaint? Is that coming from a receiving an inspection of a supplier goods? Is that coming from a nonconformance or an audit or a lab investigation? On and on and on. It's coming from all sorts of different places. So the idea is that it is a very broad set of capabilities that are being brought together to help manage all of those different events. Kim's going to get into a lot more detail about what that means. But when we talk about solving problems, what quality events does, we'll see this on the next slide now, is figure out how to improve the processes that you might have in place today. How do you manage and track the investigation of an event? How do you identify risk? How do you figure out how something impacts quality? Where's that visibility? Does it even exist? Do you have visibility? How do you understand what the impact of quality on one product might have on another in your portfolio? What it's going to have on your organization, on your people, on your customers, on your suppliers, on everybody, right? I mean, you need to understand how that all fits together. And then how does that overall quality of the product impact your risk in the marketplace, your risk for your brand, your risk financially? I mean, it's just a really long list of problems waiting to happen that don't need to happen. And so with that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn over to Kim to now take us through the solution.
Great. Thank you, David. All right. So what is this new application we're all talking about today? So this application is used to track and trend or manage the investigation process of an unplanned event or deviation that impacts the quality, performance, safety, or reliability of a product or against CGMP. We've listed a few examples of these different type of events, such as events can come from audits, an event is a complaint is an event, a deviation, which is a deviation that is from a procedure, regulations, facility, service environment, multiple different types of events, including nonconformance from a product, out of spec, or out of trend as well. So these type of events, there's also other type of events. I haven't listed them all here today, but they're different events that something happens during the process that you feel that needs to be investigated. It may not raise to the event of a CAPA, but we do want to investigate it to ensure that there isn't something that we need to do to correct that issue. So why is this application valuable? Many reasons. Our customers are finding a huge value in this application because it's capturing all different types of events. As I explained in the previous slide, not everything was listed there, but it does capture those types of events as well as other events. So it basically is a funnel that can capture different types of incidents, events, unplanned deviations as well, that you can just have basically put it into the system to identify, do we just need to track or trend these events, or do we need to go further and investigate and define what the root cause of these events are. It provides a streamlined approach and the standard way to handle these investigations, as you'll see as Eric Daniel will be providing the demo for you. It improves the root cause analysis through identifying these systemic issues. So when you're in complaints or creating an NCMR, you're going to identify that there could be possibly a systemic issue that needs further investigation. It can focus on critical issues as well that are impacting quality. It also provides visibility to upper management by sending them escalation notifications, because it's possible that there could be a field action that is required because you realize that there's some other issues that might be out in the field that you need to take actions on as well. And it's also valuable as it does not waste time in creating unnecessary corrective actions or preventative actions. It takes you through the investigation process to determine, is it something we really do need to correct, or is it something that we want to have visibility for later to determine if this becomes a critical issue or not. So let me walk through the process flow with you. So the process starts, of course, as somebody who identifies that an event has occurred. Now, again, this can come from other applications that we have on our system, such as a complaint or an audit or an NCMR, that you've identified something has become a systemic issue, that you can actually link this application to those other applications and create or start the process of an investigation. Once it's been initiated, it goes to an initial review step where somebody will identify the criticality, determine what the risk is of this event, and determine, is this something that we just want to track or trend, or do we want to go deeper into an investigation process? The next step is the investigation planning step. This is where we start creating the different actions that we want to take to investigate this issue. You have, and you'll see as Eric provides the demo, you'll see you can create as many investigation steps as you want. Through this process, once the plan has been identified, we get the plan approved for somebody to determine, yes, we agree, these are the correct steps to investigate this issue. And then the investigation becomes active. This is where all the actions would be sent out to those individuals who need to take actions as part of the investigation process, as well as identifying what the root cause is and then determining what the next steps would be if a corrective or preventive action needs to take place. The final step is a final approval step where somebody will review the entire process to ensure that we've captured all the information prior to this process being completed. All right, and at this point in time, we are going to do a poll question, our first poll question.
Okay, you should be seeing a poll come up on your screen there. If you all would just take a moment to answer those. And by the way, if you, as I mentioned at the top here, if you requested a certificate of attendance for this webinar, you do need to answer either this polling question or another one that will come up during the webinar. Otherwise, you won't get your certificate. There you go. All right, so it looks like I still got a few more coming in here. Somebody asked if we can get a copy of the recording. Yes, you will be able to get a copy of the recording. You'll get an email with that information tomorrow. And you can watch this recording to your heart's content. Okay, looks like everybody's answered here. So let's go ahead and end the poll. and share the results. Eric or David, did you want to comment on those at all? Hello?
Yeah, for the folks who are on this webinar, Dirk, I think it's great that over half are happy with the way they handle these types of events today. I think in the broader market, that I don't know that it's that significant. I think there are a lot of companies out there that still are struggling with how they handle all sorts of different events that might occur during the quality management process.
Cool. All right, I'll take these results down. There you go. You guys can continue.
Excellent. Well, now what we'll do is we'll actually take a look at our quality events application. We're going to go over the scenario that we're going to be addressing during the demonstration first, and then we'll jump right into the live software. So the scenario that we're going to take a look at today is we're going to start off by reviewing a nonconformance report dashboard. We're going to see that there's a high spike of issues with a particular product, and that is being seen across multiple locations. So we know it's a systemic issue, but we don't know what the cause of that issue is at this point. Since it appears to be a systemic issue, we're going to launch a quality event to go through the investigation process of those high occurrence of the nonconformances. And as a result, what we'll see is that we need to launch a corrective action. So that being said, we'll jump over to the first dashboard. And this is where I'm able to, of course, review that nonconformance, that high occurrence of nonconformances. So I'm going to go into a nonconformance analysis dashboard. This is pulling data from all of our manufacturing sites. And I can see that for the particular piece or product in question, there's a high occurrence of nonconformances. And I can see a breakdown of exactly what the defect is identified for those nonconformances. And as Kim mentioned, what essentially has happened is that we've launched nonconformance reports, of course, to address these individualized issues. And now what I'm able to see within this dashboard, within our ETQ Insights platform, is essentially the ability to accumulate all that data and say, hey, this is an issue. We're seeing this multiple locations. We need to address that. So of course we have multiple nonconformances already launched. And now what we can do is jump into the actual program and start or initiate a record. Bear with me for 1 second as I timed out here. And we'll get into the quality events record really quickly here once it logs in for me. So now we're in our quality event, and what we'll do is we'll kind of go through the process here. What we'll see right away in this quality event is that this was linked to a in-process nonconformance. So we, as mentioned earlier, we have the ability to connect these processes together. So the nonconformances, I have one linked in this example, but there might be multiples linked to identify that we have this coming in from multiple locations, for example. But the idea here is I can jump very quickly back to that in-process nonconformance to help pull any additional information or help identify perhaps a potential root cause of the issue itself. Now, in the initial step of the workflow process, as we saw in the process flow, I have the ability to essentially identify the who, what, where, and when. When did it occur? Where did it occur? what the actual event was, and give some basic information about what we're seeing. So we're seeing in this example a high occurrence of flashing and excess coating on screws that is used during the production process. And we've identified exactly the details in the event description portion of the form. Now, in this initial step of the workflow process, we're also able to identify any immediate actions that were taken, either in a singular location or in multiple locations. Maybe in this example, all these screws are coming from one provider, one supplier, so we might isolate that product stock and make sure we don't use it during the manufacturing process. But in this example, we checked nonconformance reports across all manufacturing locations and found similar complaints across the board. So I'm able to identify the immediate actions. I'm also able to pull information either from other applications or processes within the ETQ Reliance platform or from other business systems. So for example, in ERP, I might pull over product information. I might pull over supplier data related to the issue that we're about to decide whether or not we want to investigate or not. Now, once we identify all the baseline information, and I can add additional information here if I have it, customer information, document information, equipment information during the manufacturing process, that could all be added in here if I had that data at this point. Once we move to the initial review step of the workflow process, the group or individual that's responsible for this step is going to be able to review all this information, and that helping them determine whether or not we need to go through a further investigation, or if this is a situation where we simply want to track and trend so we can monitor this occurrence in the future. And maybe we take action in the future when we see it coming back again. In this example, we've identified this is a major issue. The criticality is identified as major. This is going to allow you to notify the important individuals, groups, stakeholders within the organization to make them aware that we have a major issue, and the system will send those notifications out automatically as part of the workflow process. We've also identified our initial assessment. Because we are seeing this across multiple manufacturing locations, we do need to go through that investigation step, so we're not simply going to track and trend this particular issue. Now, the nice thing about our forms and workflows is when I selected on the under track and trend, I selected on no, it actually forces me to go through the entire workflow process. The workflow is a business process automation tool, meaning that it is going to understand the information that you're selecting in the form and drive you through the correct process. So you're not going to be able to skip steps. Now, if I selected yes, it would actually allow me to go from initial review to final approval and simply identify, what time frame we want to track and trend and things like that. Now, once we do decide that we need to go through the formal process, as Kim mentioned in the flow, we have the ability to start identifying a couple of key things. We might at this point decide that we want to perform a risk assessment to gauge the amount of risk that this particular nonconformity has on the organization. As mentioned, this could include safety concerns. This could include issues or concerns with the product line, financial concerns of the organization. Are we going to have a high recall amount of this product because of this coding being improperly applied, things like that? So this risk assessment matrix has the ability to actually guide the decision-making process. The matrix can provide guidance as to exactly what steps need to be taken. So if there's a recall that's required, it can tell you that based off of the level of risk. If there is a corrective action required, it can tell you based off of that level of risk. So the risk assessment tool could be used at any point in the process, but it is there to help guide the employee is responsible to go through this quality event record. Now, in that third step of our workflow, in the investigation planning step, we're able to plan out what investigation steps that we want to perform. Now, we have the ability to identify for each of these steps exactly what actions we want taken, when those actions are due, who is the group or the individual that needs to be assigned to those actions. Once we identify all those pertinent steps of the process that we want to go through, we then send this to the plan approval step, which is a pretty simplistic step, but the important part here is that someone's taken a look at all the information that's been added to the record so far, perhaps even going and taking a look at all the nonconformance reports that we have related to this event, perhaps going back into the insights tool to take a look at the high level, the 30,000-foot view of what's going on across the organization to determine what additional investigation steps might need to be performed or help kind of guide the overall process. The plan is approved and we move to the active investigation step. Essentially, what the system is able to do is send out notifications automatically to those stakeholders that are assigned to perform those activities. I'll open up an example here so we can see what that looks like. It has its own specific workflow so that those individuals know exactly when that action is due. They're able to track what's going on. And more importantly, they're able to go through the investigation process and identify what they found, what actions they took, what they checked. Here's the evidence that I found. Here's the report. Here's a picture of the issue. Whatever evidentiary information might need to be provided in support of the investigation and in support of what was found during the investigation to help guide what the appropriate next steps are. Those can all be added in here. If that information is another business system, you could easily integrate with those other systems to pull that data over. So maybe it's data off of a quality control line where you're doing, CMMs and things like that. So we can pull that data over automatically if necessary. Now, once all the action items are completed, the idea would be that at this step in the process, all those activities would be reviewed. We'd have full visibility into what everyone found in their investigation steps. I'd have all that evidentiary information. And now what I am able to do as the person responsible to determine what the next steps are is I can summarize what the overall investigation found. So, we found what the issue, what we think it might be based off of the investigation. This is perhaps what we might be able to improve if we decide to initiate a corrective action. I can identify any additional information in that investigation summary section. And what I'm able to go through at that point is perhaps a root cause analysis. Now, we can select what type of root cause category we found the issue to be. We can identify what methodology we used for that root cause analysis. We can even identify who took part in that root cause analysis process. And again, the ability to identify the summary of the root cause. This is just a simple text field in this example. You can type in as much information as you need to, but if the data that you really need is already present in some sort of attachment, you have the ability to attach that information. And in fact, we've actually attached our root cause analysis worksheet right into the system. So I have, again, that visibility, that information available right within a singular system. So in the future, if we see this problem again, we can come right back to this quality event. We can actually relate quality events together, which we'll see in a few moments. So I have all that visibility in a singular system. I don't have to jump to multiple different locations. All that evidence, all that information is right here. Now, there is the ability to set up a trend analysis. So if we want to review to see if this issue has come up in the past, I had the ability to identify what the scope of the historical review was. If there were related events to this issue, I can do a lookup to all of my other quality events and link those records to this one. So I have the ability to provide that additional information and, again, easy traceability through all those processes. And again, I can add any additional comments or attachments here as well, again, supporting the ability to have all this information in one place. Finally, in this case, what we've determined is that a corrective action is needed. A corrective action is needed because we want to improve the quality of our product, and we want to identify in that corrective action record what additional steps might need to be taken. We've already performed the root cause analysis. We don't have to go through that process again in the corrective action. We've already done that. So what we're able to do is actually initiate the corrective action immediately to that step of the corrective action workflow. So I don't have to start over from scratch. All that information is already in that corrective action. All we need to do is figure out exactly what needs to be done to improve the coding of our screw, in this example, to eliminate the flashing and the excess coding. So we can go through that process in an integrated system without having to pull information from other systems, from an Excel sheet, whatever that example might be. All the information, all the records are linked totally to one another. Now, of course, as we saw in the process flow that Kim showed earlier, not every scenario is going to require us to go through the full process. And as I mentioned before, we can collect all the information in the initiate step. We can do that initial review step, and then we might determine that we want to simply track and trend this to see if there's a reoccurrence of the problem before we take any further action. So that's going to do it for the demonstration portion. What we'll do is we'll jump back over to the slide really quickly. And the last thing that I want to touch upon before we kind of open things up, I think, to the next poll question and then some Q&A, is that we are talking about Reliance being a platform of numerous different applications to help you manage all of your quality compliance requirements within an organization. So of course, we have core applications that manage corrective actions, change management, document control, training, and audits. We also have numerous application sets to help your organization in wherever really that you need help. Everyone needs quality, everyone needs core applications, that's why they're the core. But then you have the ability to add any additional functionality to your particular environment that you might need, such as quality events or such as a supply chain quality. So this is a total solution. One powerful, agile platform, and all of the applications are going to look very similar to what we saw today. And that'll bring us to poll question number 2.
All right, thanks, Eric. And we'll put up this, this poll here. What do you call them? Now that we've introduced you to the application, how does your organization refer to these events and processes? And this is an interesting question, David, because we actually, right as the webinar started, we had a person asked, what do you mean by an unexpected event or an unplanned event? And I think that's probably because they're used to referring to them as something different, maybe a nonconformance. Oh, I think you're muted.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is what we have found is that as we've talked to different customers, and Kim can tell you this as well, we hear the same capability referred to in so many different ways. So it's just, we want to make sure that, that we are capturing what is being called an unplanned event or a deviation or whatever it is. And in fact, we don't have the ability here to have free text. You see that other box? If you guys can, on the webinar, can just put into the chat, for example, what else you call these. Is there some other term that your organization uses? You just drop that in the chat. That would be great.
Oh, actually, so drop that in the Q&A. The chat is turned off, but yeah, you can just put it in the
okay.
Q&A.
Put in the Q&A.
We'll
Yep. Sorry.
Well. Yeah, no problem. All right, we'll give you another few seconds here. Looks like it's starting to wind down a little bit.
Okay.
And while we're doing that, now is the time. Also, I think we're going to be going into the Q&A pretty quick here. So if you do have any questions you want to send us, just mouse down towards the bottom of your screen there. You'll see the Q&A button, and go ahead and start sending your questions in. And let's go ahead and end this poll and share the results, and we'll see what. So it looks like most of you call them 58%. You guys call them nonconformances, but looks like, what do we got next? What incident and deviation seem to be the next two popular.
And then in the chat, in the Q&A, we got quality system failures, we had adverse occurrence, we had incident, we had corrective action. It seems like more coming in. Quality issues, issue, occurrences. So lots of different ways to refer to something that goes bump in the night, right? Kind of a thing.
All right, I'll turn those off.
Okay, great. And we'll head on into the Q&A now. Again, if anybody has any questions, just drop it into the Q&A section. We've gotten a bunch of them already, and thank you everyone for doing that. And as we go through the Q&A, what we've seen from Kim and Eric have been a way to address all of whatever we call these things. And in fact, if you want some additional resources, Eric, if you just go to the next slide, let's give you a direction as to where you can find things while we go through the Q&A. So, Kim, lots of questions coming in, and they're just flying in here. Now, Ty had a question. Can the unplanned event documentation auto-populate a kappa when applicable?
Yep, absolutely. So all our applications on our platform interact with each other, so you can definitely inherit information from one application to another, so you don't have to manually put it in again, and of course have possibly some errors by doing so. So yeah, so all our applications, you can determine what fields you want to inherit from one to another. They also have links from one record to another record within the system as well. So it's quick and easy to navigate through the different screens for each of these processes.
Okay, great. Then the next question from Steve is, will the system allow users to create and name events that are specific to their process? I guess part of this is, we have a list of events that we've identified. Can you have others?
Absolutely, absolutely. Our system is completely configurable. So you have the ability to add additional keywords. You can also add additional workflows. You can also have these workflows that pertain to a different workflow or a different process that pertains to maybe a specific location. Same thing with those different types of events. You have the ability to, based on a specific location of your facility, you have the ability to specify for a specific location what those events should be. So a lot of different options there. Specifically, if you have a lot of different divisions that may use different terminology, you definitely have the freedom within our software to make those types of modifications.
Okay, great. Richard had a question. Are there templates for nonconformances or other forms that can be used with company logo? Can we do other configurations? I'm looking at this as more general. Can we do configurations of a form to individual specifications?
Yes. So again, kind of goes back to what I had just mentioned as well. A lot of our system again is very flexible. And when I say configurable, it means this is not like high-tech configurable. Using our designer tool, you can drag and drop different items within the process, such as fields and forms and workflow elements. So, you know, to have to make it your own, you definitely have that flexibility within our tool.
Okay, great. Then let's see, I've got a question from Pedro. Is the quality event app intended to capture defects detected at the workstation by the operators, or when would you expect that to be entered into the environment, into the system?
So defects, so a couple different ways. So defects from you know, product. So we're talking more of a non-conforming material, I'm assuming here. So that could go into, we have an application for non-conforming material, and then we can you know, based on a systemic issue, we we can then also add it into a quality events to dive a little bit deeper, specific to that systemic issue.
Okay, great. And Eric, I have a question for you here. This is from Steve. Since this is a cloud-based system, are the stages of the process and results available to many employees and cross departments? And you're on mute right now.
Yes, thank you, David. It can be, it certainly can be. And the idea behind our system is that you can have that displayed to whatever employees that you want to see that information. Because if it is a systemic issue, you want people in other departments or even perhaps other locations to be able to view that and say, wait, we're seeing that exact problem, and then perhaps collaborate on exactly where the issue should lie. So we have a functionality called contextual awareness that will essentially see where employees are, what their responsibilities are within the organization as a whole, and then you can identify, based off of that information, if that employee or that group can see that information, or perhaps it's information that you don't want them to see.
Okay, great. Here's a definitional one for you, Kim, from Swapna. Can you clarify what you mean by track and trend?
Sure. So it's basically so from a tracking standpoint, if you are in the system and you determine based on the criticality of an event, so if the event is a low criticality, you may hold off on doing an investigation. So here's an example. I use this example a lot, kind of a different type of an example, but say there's a spider in the clean room that has been identified. So based on the criticality, you might say, well, you know what, this might be a one-off. This might be just something that maybe just occurred with on somebody's clothes. It doesn't necessarily mean we have an issues with spiders, but we want to capture it. We want to capture that this event had happened. So we'll capture the event within quality events. And it's basically what we have it there. So then that way, if it happens again, then we can maybe bump up the criticality and say, you know what, we're seeing this, there's a trend here that's happening. And it's something that we want to investigate further just to confirm that this is not a bigger issue than what we initially thought. So that is why we call it the track and trend. We're going to track it. We're going to put it in the system just so we have visibility of it. But we're not going to do a complete investigation until we may see it happening again, and that we may boost up the criticality of it.
Okay, and let me continue on this tracking and trending. There's
Sure.
a few more questions here. Dan wants to know, how do we track the trending to production volume? Can we do that?
Yes, so this is using our insights tool. So when you, in the beginning, Eric had showed you as part of his demonstration, he showed you the insights tool, which then shows the capturing of the different nonconformances within there. You would also be able to, and I don't want to get too into the weeds here, but you would have the ability to pull in production information using our quality data lake. To capture that information and report on where you're seeing these issues between the production and as well as your nonconformances that you might be identifying.
Okay, And then Jeffrey wanted to know, do you have the capability to set a standard or criteria for trending? For example, top 5 events.
Absolutely. So you can build business rules within the software. So based on based on the could be based on the product, based on a failure code or a root cause. If all of a sudden you start seeing these issues come up, you can set a business rule within the software that basically will flag you that there might be a systemic issue happening.
Okay, great. And then a question from Beatrice, Kim. How do you warrant that the users have standardized descriptions of the quality events? So if there's a repetitive issue or something with the same root cause, you're able to identify that they are the same?
So a couple things. Obviously you can identify that within the procedures, within your procedures of what the different types of events and the descriptions of those events are within obviously your SOP. Or you can also add descriptions within the software tool to help guide them so there's consistencies on what those different types of events descriptions are.
Okay. Eric, question for you. How do we generate PDF forms out of the system so they can be sent to customers or providers and so forth?
Yeah, great question. So we actually have a PDF conversion tool built into the platform that at the appropriate step of a workflow process, we can create a PDF version of a report. We also have built into the platform Office integration template capability, which can enable you to essentially have your company logo and everything really built into the templates, so that when you do create that PDF, it's a formalized document that you can send to your customers or your suppliers, whatever the example might be. So it's built right in the platform, PDF conversion. You can even print to PDF if you want to take like the standard record and just create a copy of it and have it as a digital or paper version.
Okay, great. And Eric, while I still have you on here, you in the demo, you showed the nonconformance dashboard. Is that included with the quality events application?
It's actually part of the nonconformance application. So the way those insight dashboards work, and not to, again, get into the weeds too much, they're tied to the application. So you would have to have the nonconformance application to be able to see that dashboard. But there would be a quality events related dashboard as well to show you, trending and tracking information.
Okay, great. And then a third question for you from Teresa. It's about the risk assessment tool that you talked about. At this point, I know we're going to be running short on time, but is that, she wanted to see that, but at this point, is the risk assessment tool part of the whole quality events process? Is it an offline determination that's made by the customer? How does that work a little bit more? Can you describe it?
Yeah, so the risk assessment capability is a tool that's built into the platform that can be called upon from any application, any form on the platform itself. So essentially, it's a risk matrix where you can define what the parameters are that you want to measure, like probability and severity, for example. You can have different risk items that you look at, such as business risk, safety risk, financial risk, those sort of things. And essentially, you're identifying in my example, the probability and severity, and that will give you a risk level. And that can give you guidance based off of that individual risk item, or you can look at the guidance that's provided at the top level of that risk assessment. So it's built into the platform. It can be called upon in any process within the platform itself. Okay,
great. Kim, another question for you. Somebody's following up on your spider example here, and it's around trending. This is from Danny. When trending, is that an automated process, or would someone need to be looking for a similar event to find a trend? For example, with the spider event, would someone need to search or look for spider type events to see this trend?
That's great. So we have built in the tool that you can actually quickly search for a specific scenario within the tool. However, again, you can add business rules in to help identify and automatically pull that information up for you versus doing it manually to identify those issues, or basically by just entering, as I mentioned, going back to those business rules. As soon as you select certain options, you can have it set up where it will flag you and say, you know what, we found another related event like this, so we can make you aware of it. So there's many different options in the tool, for these specific business rules.
Okay, great. Now, early on, we answered a question from Ty about unplanned events, documenting and populating CAPA. He's followed up, and I don't know if this is Eric or Kim want to answer this, but this is about, do field names have to be the same to be able to transfer the information?
I'll take that one. They do not have to be the same, but when we're doing or setting up what we call the inheritance settings, you do have to point to the correct, essentially the correct field name, and that doesn't have to be necessarily the same as the displayed name. So as long as the field name from the nonconformance matches the field name to the quality event, then it'll share that information across. So you can have different titles of the fields and not necessarily, and still be able to transfer that information between the two records.
Okay. And let me see what we got here. I think there are a couple questions that are very specific that we'll want to take offline and directly communicate with the people who have asked. At this point, I think we've hit about most of the questions that have been asked. Really appreciate that. Frank did drop in one additional name for what they call these things, and he said, "Great opportunity for improvement report," which I think is great. So that's, I think that covers it, Dirk. At this point, I want to thank everybody, thank Kim and Eric, and turn it back over to you.
Thanks to all of you for joining us. You will be receiving an email with a link to this recording from Quality Digest in about 24 hours from now, so keep your eyes open for that email. That is it for today's webinar. So from all of us here at Quality Digest and ETQ, have a great day, and we will see you at the next webinar. So long.